It can't be denied that this season has been a successful one for Ferrari. Although they missed out on the Constructors' World Championship by the narrowest of margins behind McLaren, this season really marked a huge amount of progress for the team that finished ahead of Red Bull in the Constructors' standings. Indeed, they were only 14 points behind McLaren at the end, and they fought to the very end to be able to actually get that victory in the Constructors. Their first, what would have been their first since 2008. It's been a very long time for the Scuderia for this, and they head into 2025 on a high, really. A double podium in Abu Dhabi. They were very, very good around this race, you know, but had things been slightly differently, I think they could have won the actual championship. You know, that kind of gap could have been overturned quite easily. Although around the halfway point of the season, Ferrari were looking not that great, you know, going into the summer break before the Dutch Grand Prix, after the Belgian Grand Prix. I would say there was a very legitimate case to say that was the fourth fastest car on the grid. Now that is no longer the case. I think there's not a lot between them and the McLaren, and I think they actually have a faster car than the Red Bull to end 2024. But with all that in mind, guys, I wanted to have a look at the 5 moments that cost Ferrari the championship. If these things went slightly differently, if mistakes hadn't been made, that 14-point deficit could have been a couple points advantage by the end of the season. I mean, to put it into perspective, 14 points, that is less points than you get for third place. So if a retirement or a non-score was a third place finish at any point during this season, even without taking any points away from McLaren, then they would have won the championships. There's not a lot in it. But let's have a look at these guys, because there were some very key moments. And the first one that I want to highlight is Canada. The Canadian Grand Prix was not a good one for Ferrari. They actually finished every single race before this in the points. Not only finished every race, but finished them in the points before this, but they had a double DNF. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc had awful weekends, particularly Leclerc. It was not Leclerc's fault though. Leclerc was pit onto the dry tyres during the safety car period on a wet track. Every single driver on the circuit, other than Leclerc, was on the intermediate tyres, and when they got going again, it was just not good enough. I think he ended up nearly 2 laps down before he actually ended up retiring. Sainz was also out partway through this race as well with a collision. You know, they weren't looking particularly quick, Ferrari. It was not looking like a race that realistically could have won. I understand why they made a gamble, but it was the wrong gamble. It was really, really bad gamble, really. And unfortunately for them, the second moment I want to highlight, well, let's just skip ahead. Bit of a segue there, but let's skip ahead to the UK, the British round Silverstone, because they didn't really learn from their errors when it came to putting the right tyre compound on the car for the conditions that are happening, because the opposite happened around Silverstone. It was raining in the early stages of the race. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc were both near the front of the field. They were both in with a shot potentially of a podium this weekend, in my opinion, although that wasn't the paciest race for Ferrari. But they really just ended any hope of Charles Leclerc actually getting a good points finish by putting him onto the intermediate tyres on a damp track. Now, it was difficult. The guys on the dry tyres were struggling, of course, and I don't think he was the only one to pit onto the intermediate tyres. So again, I understand why they did it, but it was the wrong call. The track started to dry out pretty quickly after that, and he had to come into the pits again. In the end, Leclerc did finish the race, but he was all the way down in 14th place. Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, got 5th place. So even if Charles Leclerc was, say, 6th, 7th, that's a few crucial points that Ferrari missed out on. Let's rewind it just a little bit, though, to the round before in Austria, because, again, this is a big missed opportunity for me, and it was one that was really thrown away from the start of the race. You know, you had Carlos Sainz getting 3rd place in his Ferrari, which was a good finish, but again, Leclerc on the receiving end of things, getting involved in an incident early on, getting damage to his front wing, having to pit. And this is one of his best tracks, by the way. You know, I think he won here in 2019, or he was challenging for the win in 2019 with Max Verstappen. He's had a lot of success here, a lot of good results. In the end, he only just missed out on points, getting all the way back to 11th by the finish. But the fact that Verstappen and Lando Norris tangled in the lead, that was very much a big missed opportunity for them. You know, if they were in and around that area, Leclerc conservatively, without that crash, I think could have been at least 2nd, 3rd. He might have even won the race. You know, George Russell, who did win the race, was not the quickest driver. He was just in the right position at the right time, and he took advantage and deserved his win, of course. But again, a big missed opportunity for Ferrari. Get a 3rd place there, they win the Constructors. Simple as that. Fourth one, let's talk about Azerbaijan, Baku. Now, Charles Leclerc was challenging for the victory in this one. Again, another specialist circuit of Leclerc. And Carlos Sainz was challenging Sergio Perez for third place. These guys were in a big battle at the front of the field. The top four in this race were having an amazing battle. Piastri, Leclerc, Sainz, and Sergio Perez. Perez looking good for a change, again, around a track that he does very well around over the years as well. Now, honestly, it's been a while. I can't remember who I actually blamed for this incident, but the thing is, both drivers could have actually avoided this crash quite easily had they wanted to, you know, and it was just a tangle, just a coming together between Perez and Sainz coming out of the second corner at the end of the race. They both crash out of the race, and unfortunately, because of that, that was points gained by McLaren, because of course, I think, where was Lando Norris in the end in this race? I think he was like, was he third or fourth place? He ended up in fourth place, so he went up from sixth to fourth because of this incident, and that gained Lando Norris points. It cost Carlos Sainz points. Even if Sainz finished in fourth place in this race, again, that is a big point swing and could have made the difference by the end of the season. And the last moment is Brazil. Brazil was such a crazy weekend, man. Like, honestly, it was incredible what was going on around Interlagos, but a retirement for Carlos Sainz during the race in Sao Paulo. Again, that was a big hammer blow to the team. You had Charles Leclerc up in fifth place, which, given the craziness ahead of him with the Alpines and obviously George Russell and Max Verstappen, you know, fifth place for Leclerc is actually a good finish. He managed to finish higher up than either McLaren, and you would expect Carlos Sainz to be in and around that battle, again, taking points off of McLaren, potentially gaining more for Ferrari, but he ended up crashing out in the very tricky conditions around Interlagos. It was a very difficult weekend, in fairness. I'm not going to dwell on that too much for the smooth operator, but again, you have to say that as a retirement that cost them. Overall, though, Ferrari throughout the whole season to get up into second place and challenge McLaren to the very end, I think is very admirable. Like I say, they are going into 2025 on a high. I'll be very excited to see what Leclerc and Sir Lewis Hamilton do in red overalls next year. I think they're going to be definitely one of the challenges for the season. They just need to have a bit more consistency at the start of the season, not unlike McLaren, in fairness. I feel like they've learned from some of their mistakes, particularly putting the wrong tyres on the car. They haven't done that since Britain, although there's not been that many opportunities other than Sao Paulo where it's been wet, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. But anyway, guys, what do you think? Ferrari fans, let us know. What do you think about this season on the whole? Do you mark it as a success or a near miss? I want to hear what you have to say. And where do you guys think you'll finish in the Constructors' Championship next season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more content on the world of Formula 1 just like this.